What is up, everybody? Welcome into the reveal of the number 14 team in my 2021 NFL Power Rankings with a deep dive into the New Orleans Saints. Before we get started, a quick reminder to please do hit that like button down below. Really helps show your support for this series. Also, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss an upload as we count down to number 1 in my Power Rankings. So the Saints coming in at 14, I am going to be completely honest, I think have the biggest spectrum of outcomes, like such a super polarizing team. I don't think I'm less confident in any other team's ranking throughout this series. I could see them finishing, with 4 wins this year and the quarterback situation being a disaster, or I could see this kind of coming together and being a playoff team. So I will just leave that there before we get into it without spoiling too much. They've also kind of been off to a rough start this offseason with Onyemata suspension and the Michael Thomas injury. Going to really make things difficult in the start of their season as well. So already, kind of dividing some opinions here on the Saints. They do come in at 14, though, which is higher than most people probably expected here. And really what this comes down to is this is going to be such a test. We spend all this time talking about offensive coordinators and play calling and how it's an offensive league and how having that offensive-minded head coach is so important. And this is going to be such a great test for how much weight that can carry. Not to say that it's false if the Saints don't work out, but if they do work out, that's really going to show you that, the power of a great offensive-minded head coach like they have in Sean Payton. And that is the resounding reason why this team comes in 14th is we talk so much about culture and earning the benefit of the doubt. The Saints are one of those teams that have earned that benefit of the doubt, and we can look at some of these holes right now, but the Saints are a team that has shown the ability to develop players at a really high level and get the most out of their players. So it's a little bit of why they still come in 14th for me, but that does not mean that there are not some pretty major question marks here, and that starts with this team's offseason that was, let's just say, busy for the Saints. This team has been kind of the end of a lot of jokes about the salary cap not existing, and finally the Saints kind of had to pay the piper on a lot of this stuff. They kept kicking the can down the road, and eventually, they had to actually make some tough cuts and some stuff, not let some guys come back here. Now, they still made $50 million in salary cap magically disappear, and now they have like $10 million in space. So I still can't really explain that. This team just does whatever they want to do. But they did actually have to have some losses for the first time in a while here, which puts them in an interesting window. But anyway, we'll talk about the players that they lost in just a second. They actually had some really critical position coaches that got really sniped by the Detroit Lions. Aaron Glenn, to me, one of the ascending minds and defensive coordinators in the league, one of the best defensive backs coaches in the entire league. So he's going to head to Detroit to be their defensive coordinator, but also Dan Campbell as well. It felt like whoever they played at tight end was blocking their ass off and proving people wrong. And I think Dan Campbell's a big part of that and was a big reason he got that head coach offer. So some of their staff here is going to be on the way out, and that matters. So that's worth noting, especially for the Saints here. We haven't talked about a lot of coordinators leaving in this series, but those are 2 of the best in the league on their way out. Drew Brees, of course. Now, this team is 9-1 in the last 2 years without Drew Brees. There's a world where this is addition by subtraction with Drew Brees, who was not fun to watch last year. Now, the leadership and the down consistency is going to be missing there with Drew Brees gone, but he's gone, and they're going to have to figure out what they're doing at quarterback now and for the future. So that's the biggest question here for the Saints in general. And then you lose some veterans here. Jared Cook is on the way out. Emmanuel Sanders, after just 1 year in New Orleans, they're letting him go. He wasn't really as good as they had hoped for, had a hard time staying healthy, and was a little bit expensive. So a couple cap casualties there. Jared Cook may have actually been an impending free agent. Can't quite remember how that shook down. Trey Hendrickson is going to be a key departure here. He played a large role as that third edge off the bench, was kind of the 6th man of the year, if you will. Had a really good year for New Orleans last year. Got a big contract up there in Cincinnati. You'll see they're looking to replace that role with Peyton Turner. And then Sheldon Rankins on the interior defensive line. Good player, just had a hard time staying healthy. Janoris Jenkins, definitely a cap casualty there, veteran corner. And then potentially losing Quan Alexander. They're somehow, I guess, going to bring him back, maybe. Like I said, I don't know how this team has cap space, but it seems they still do. Potentially getting Quan Alexander back, that is up in the air as of this recording. But then the key additions, very minimal. This is the first offseason in a while for the Saints where they didn't really add anybody. And that was, again, finally the piper needing to be paid here, as they weren't able to really participate in free agency this year. So they go to the draft to look to fill some holes, getting Peyton Turner to play that third edge role spot, a starting linebacker hopefully in Pete Werner, and Paulson Adebo, who could start here at corner, as we're going to take a look at this secondary in a little bit. But we are going to go position by position, ranking each group how they stack up against the rest of this league, a full roster overview here, if you will, and that means we get to start by talking about the big old question here, and that is quarterback, where they are going to rank 27th in the league for me, and that's maybe even perhaps a little optimistic, depending on who you ask. I do believe Jameis Winston is the day one starter here for New Orleans, because for me, he just has so much more upside than Taysom Hill. Yes, Hill is technically fast and technically has a strong arm, but you go trait by trait from a quarterback evaluation standpoint, Taysom Hill just lacks so many things: accuracy, anticipation, ability to process defenses, pocket presence, poise, you name it. He is an erratic wildcat quarterback, and he's gonna come into the picture here. You know, he's, I think, going to keep that role as a guy that comes in at random times and you can run certain packages. He's going to be a part-time starter as a tight end, slot receiver, H-back, running back, fullback, you name it. I still think he plays a role here. He is the highest paid quarterback on the team, and he has contributed in creative ways to helping this offense succeed. And I don't think he's like this massive liability, but I just can't imagine that Sean Payton is going to see him as the full-time starting quarterback here. I refuse to believe that. Now, if that's what Sean Payton decides with Taysom Hill, so be it. We'll see. It would be an experiment, to say the least. But for me, Jameis is the actual quarterback here. He's the guy that has started a lot of games. He's played in the biggest moments, going back to his college career. He was a first-round pick. He's put up large numbers, but that's all stuff I don't typically talk about here. He has actual traits as a quarterback as well. He has accuracy. I do think he's better at reading coverages. Now, he's much more mistake-prone at reading those coverages, but he at least, I think, has a better idea of what he's seeing. He has a better pocket presence. He knows when and how to extend plays. He has the arm talent. So there's still a lot there with Jameis Winston. He's still young. He's only 28 years old. There could be a Ryan Tannehill situation here where he takes a step back, gets a new situation. He's now had a year to know the system. He came back here to compete and I believe win the starting job. That's where the 27th ranking comes in. I think Jameis is a mistake-prone, explosive quarterback. He's in the Drew Locks and Jalen Hurtses of the world, where you just don't necessarily know what you're getting on a play-to-play basis. Now, that's really frustrating for a Sean Payton, who is probably the best just game planner in the NFL. I don't know if he stacks up necessarily with Shanahan and maybe Andy Reid as like play designer necessarily, but I think Sean Payton is the best at game planning, knowing how to attack opposing defenses. And when Jameis Winston is just randomly gifting the ball to the other team because he's going off script and doing whatever he wants to do, which has been Jameis throughout his career, that's when this team's going to get in trouble, because Sean Payton, if he gets the old Jameis Winston here, is not going to have it for very long. I think you get maybe 4 or 5 weeks of the old Jameis, and then it's Taysom Hill time. It's Ian Book time. It's Trevor Siemian time. And that's like where this thing can go south in a hurry. And I don't even think that's necessarily unlikely to happen here. But I also don't think we can just write off Jameis Winston playing as a top 20 quarterback or so. We're not that far removed from him being viewed in that light. And with Sean Payton here, I believe in Payton to develop Jameis and weed out some of those tendencies. I think that is something that can be developed to a certain light. So it's going to be fun to see this all play out. Am I super confident that they're going to have a good quarterback room here? No. But also keep in mind that, this team's won a lot of games, and Drew Brees was like the 20th best quarterback in the NFL last year. Like, seriously. He just didn't do a ton other than avoiding mistakes. So, man, that's the quarterback breakdown. 27th in the league. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. Let's move on and talk about the rest of this roster that still has a ton of talent. They, yes, had to make some tough salary cap, decisions, but there's still a ton of talent on this roster. And for those that think this team should be ranked much lower and in the 20s, I would just say, hear me out. There's a lot of talent that they can turn to, and it's top-end talent still throughout this roster. And that starts at running back. I think the Saints, we talk about running backs not mattering. Well, Alvin Kamara to me is one of those backs that he deserves the money. I mean, for everything he does for this team, and with Michael Thomas out, he's going to be their best receiver as well. He has everything as a runner you look for. He's got vision, patience, contact balance, power, elusiveness, speed. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL. I would say he is the 6th best running back in the NFL as a runner. But when you factor in the receiving ability, that's when he gets into the same conversations with Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb. Same thing with like Christian McCaffrey. Very similar. So, you've got a great runner of the football. And then we'll talk again what he brings to the table as a receiving back. So he is, especially when paired with the offensive line they're going to have here, a legitimate, rare running back that's going to elevate the situation here. He's going to create yards on the ground, and he's going to create yards through the air. That adds value, which we don't say about a ton of running backs throughout this series. So that's superstar number one. We're going to continue to reveal them as we go here. You got Latavius Murray as RB2. He's one of the better RB2s in the league, which of course makes this one of the best RB duos, maybe the best outside of Cleveland right now. He is a straight line power threat. He has actually been kind of under the radar as a nice contributor for the Saints here. It helps keep Kamara fresh as well. And with this offensive line, you're still going to have a really high-end running game that's schemed up well from Peyton as well. You'll mix in Taysom Hill with what he can do with all the different stuff. So the running game still has value in the NFL, and the Saints have one of the best running games in the league. It's a big reason why they've been able to win so many games with or without Drew Brees in there. They have not had great quarterback play over the last 20 games or so, and they've still been one of the better teams in the entire league. So this running back room does add a lot to the table here. You have Ty Montgomery as a backup there. I once believed in Ty Montgomery, but it just never surfaced. He's got some traits. He can contribute as a receiver if anything happens to Kamara. And then your duo is Murray and Montgomery there. And then Washington is actually very much a similar build to Latavius Murray as that big straight line speedy guy. So that's probably your four. They also picked up Stevie Scott, who was an underclassman who declared out of Indiana. Just not a good athlete, but is a big bruiser type of running back. I could see him sticking around in the practice squad, getting called up, and maybe being someone to keep an eye on there as that Latavius Murray role in the future. So 6th at running back, and again, they're going to help out in this receiving grade here as well, though to a limited degree, because they rank 29th for receiving core. And, I've tried to stay pretty down the line, trying to be as neutral as I can for this series and try not to be too takey, but I have a take here with Michael Thomas, and I'm prepared for backlash from Saints fans, but I was already feeling this way heading into the year without Drew Brees, but now the injury stuff continuing to stack up. I think not just Michael Thomas might be one of the more overrated players in the NFL, which I had said before last season when I refused to admit that Michael Thomas was the number one receiver in the NFL, which played out last year pretty clearly. But to go even further, I am not convinced that without Drew Brees here that Michael Thomas is going to remain a top a alpha number one receiver and even like a top 20 to 25 receiver in the NFL. And that's a huge statement there. Let me explain it a little bit. Michael Thomas has some things that he does at an elite level. The problem is the things that he does almost require a Drew Brees type of quarterback, a guy that throws with timing, accuracy, and anticipation. And it's not that Michael Thomas can't separate, because he can, but the ways that he separates are with timing over the short and intermediate part of the field. And to have a Drew Brees that can accurately put it within that catch radius on time, and guys that can see zone coverages the same way and process things and be on the same page, that chemistry and really cohesion with their skill sets is what made Michael Thomas at a point in time the most productive receiver in the NFL. Now he's getting really the polar opposite with his quarterbacks. And you're now going to be looking at Michael Thomas probably having to win a lot more straight up on slants, comebacks, hitches, and go balls, and corner routes and posts, and typical receiver stuff that you see from most of the other receivers around the league when you're not working in this well-timed, well-rehearsed passing game that's going to have to adapt and evolve here. So when I look at Michael Thomas's traits in that regard, I think he's good, but I think he's a little bit closer to, Mike Williams, maybe Devontae Parker. Like, that's the type of athlete, the type of separator, the type of ball winner I see him as. So I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he comes out and looks like Keenan Allen running routes and is Mike Evans as a contested catch guy for Jameis Winston here. But honestly, even when he gets back healthy, which is a major question mark, like they said he was supposed to get back healthier sooner than he did last year, and that didn't happen. Now this injury pops up out of nowhere. Is this looking more like an Odell Beckham situation too, where it's like, is he gonna be able to stay healthy because of his physical play style? That's another question mark here, but I'm gonna get a little takey with Michael Thomas, man. They ranked 29th for receiver in the NFL, and a big part of that is I don't see Michael Thomas being, I'm just gonna say, an elite receiver for the Saints next year. And I think he could end up being one of the more overrated, overpaid players in the league now with Drew Brees gone. And we'll see how that plays out. I know there's going to be people that agree with me, and there's going to be Saints fans that are very mad about me, but that's honestly how I view Michael Thomas, take it or leave it, and it does kind of make this grade come down a little bit lower than you might expect. But he is still, at this point in time, a quality number one receiver, at least. The rest of this unit doesn't inspire a ton of confidence either. You have Traquan Smith heading into his fourth year, who's had been injured, and when he's on the field, he's shown flashes, but I just don't think he's a consistent playmaker. I think he's a wide receiver 4 with some vertical speed. I don't really picture a breakout year here for Traquan Smith. He's gonna get some opportunities. He's shown some flashes. I don't really buy into that. Now, the guy I'm actually pretty excited to watch here is Deontay Harris, who many people might not actually be aware of. He was a player that I kept calling back to in the pre-draft process when we were talking about guys like Rondale Moore and Jalen Darden and even Elijah Moore in a little bit. This class was unique with like 5'7", 5'6" receivers, really, being at the top of those draft boards. And historically, we've said if you're under 5'8", 5'9", like you're just not going to be a consistent receiver. But part of that is those guys just don't get the opportunities. And you kind of can look around the league. You've got Deontay Harris here. Jakeem Grant in Miami has shown some things. Up in Indianapolis, they have a guy, I can't recall his name right now, but he's shown some stuff. And looking around the league, I think there's this evolution. And Sean Payton's always been a guy that can get that out of guys and kind of coach with anticipation, if you will, and start trends. And I think we're seeing that a little bit with Deontay Harris, with Jalen Darden, Rondale Moore, these really quick, fast, separating types of receivers who can catch the ball. Like if they're open, they'll catch the ball. Yeah, their catch radius might not be huge and they might not win these amazing contested catches, but a guy like Deontay Harris can get open, especially as the NFL becomes more spread out and the rules have changed where these guys don't have to get, pressed down the field. You can't touch these guys. So Deontay Harris is in that mold with Rondale Moore and Jalen Darden, who were really good receiving prospects in this class. And in the Saints playoff game against the Bears, Deontay Harris was their best offensive player. So he has still a lot to prove, and we don't have a huge track record of guys at this size becoming consistent, stable impacts. But he's a guy to look at, especially with Michael Thomas out, and say, can he be a guy that's open for Jameis Winston and schemed up well as well with Sean Payton? And I think he is a guy that's trending up, and it's around the league a trend to keep an eye on is can these 5'6", 5'7" speedsters with really quick feet and route running ability, can they start to become more of a force in the NFL? So that was a tangent, but I think worth bringing up. Marcus Callaway, who is in the same breath as Tre'Quan Smith. I thought he was a 6th-round prospect with some vertical threat ability, and with Michael Thomas out, he's probably going to start and could be a decent little early season fantasy option for you. Could catch some nice deep balls, score some touchdowns, but I don't know if he's a long-term starter there or not. And then the depth, you got Lil Jordan Humphrey on the all-name NFL team, kind of an oversized receiver, undersized tight end type. Same thing with Juwan Johnson. Both those guys are good blockers and contested catch guys, but probably not going to play a ton. They draft Kawan Baker, who's in the same mold as Tre'Quan Smith and Marquez Callaway, as more of that, 6'1", speedy, deep threat type. So that's probably your receiving room there. I think those 7 are who you're looking at. Maybe Lampman or McCleskey stick around, or Easop Winston, but probably not more practice squad types there. The tight end group, again, they've really gotten these guys to step up and always play at a high level, whether it's Troutman or Cook or Josh Hill that was here, or Taysom Hill playing this role as well. But with Dan Campbell gone, how much of that benefit of the doubt is still there? So Troutman was kind of the last beneficiary, I suppose, of the Dan Campbell presence here, because he was one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, and all these tight ends help out what is one of the better run games in the league, so that's all factored in there. But Troutman is an intriguing young player. I don't think he's super high upside from like a separating, I don't think he's going to be Travis Kelce or anything, but he could be Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles. He could get up into that top 10 tight end conversation. Good contested ball skills, a guy that has enough speed to separate, excellent run blocker. I think Troutman's an ascending stud tight end, just hasn't played a ton. They did sign Nick Vannett for depth. You got to factor in Taysom Hill into all of this and the different gimmick stuff that he can do. The decoy, the threat of him potentially passing the ball, it's well deployed here. He's fast, he can separate, he's good with the ball in his hands. He is a real weapon. We make jokes, but he helps this offense in a weird way. Just kind of complicates all this stuff. Garrett Griffin, good blocking tight end, stepped up last year in a limited role. Wolf and Sonner are going to compete for a practice squad opportunity probably. And then the receiving backs here kind of mix into this whole sort of, I keep saying this, and I don't want to keep coming back to it, but it's a well-schemed run game, play action, play fakes, short to intermediate. The ability to have Alvin Kamara there, it just elevates all of this. It's a nice run offense, and I think it's still going to move without Drew Brees there. And having Alvin Kamara on screens and angle routes out of the backfield and running wheel routes and getting deep and being a check down option, that matters especially the way this offense is schemed. So that is nice. But when you need a bucket here, when it's a difficult third down, do you have a guy that's going to win a one-on-one matchup and make that play down the field? No, I really don't think you do, and that might even be with Michael Thomas there. And that's been a struggle for the Saints, is when the early stuff doesn't work, because eventually a good defense is going to figure you out and make some good plays on early downs. Who here is going to really get you that great play down the field? That's lacking to me. A lot of the value that these guys bring is brought to the table by Sean Payton and the way that things are schemed up here. And that's, of course, factored in here. We'll see what they rank for offensive coordinator and stuff. You guys saw my formula at the start of the show. That's why they rank 14th in the power rankings, not because of the talent they have in the receiving group. That's my stance on this receiving group. Let's move on to the offensive line, however, where they do have legitimate elite talent. And, man, this could be the best run game in the NFL if all of this stays healthy. So you have the best tackle duo undisputedly in the NFL with Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. there's just nothing to criticize about these guys other than maybe Teron Armstead has had a difficult time staying healthy throughout his career. But when they're out there, you have 2 elite pass blocking tackles and 2 elite run blocking tackles. They're athletic, they're tough, they're technically sound, they're strong. There's literally nothing wrong with this tackle duo. It's amazing. And then you have Eric McCoy, who's been a very sound center, still developing in, what is this, year 3 for Eric McCoy. Really athletic dude, phenomenal run blocker, and hopefully getting better guard play around him. He looks a lot more like rookie year Eric McCoy, where he was one of the better pass protecting centers, whereas last year didn't quite get the same help. That right guard spot with Cesar Ruiz in his rookie year wasn't great. Andrews Pete, still just kind of not great in general, but I look at Cesar Ruiz taking that step up in year 2. Really was not a prospect that was going to likely be a great rookie. Super young coming out of Michigan. Didn't run a ton of traditional pass sets there. And just a guy that I do think needed some time. I have full confidence in the Saints to get Cesar Ruiz, a first-round pick last year, up to speed and playing at least like a quality starter at guard, if not better, because he was drafted in the first round for a reason. He has get-off, power. He is a rock when he can get his hands on you in pass protection. So I do think Cesar Ruiz climbs up and can start to look more like what they were expecting from a first-round pick, or at least now is when they were expecting it. I don't know if they wanted it in year 1 or not. I'm sure they were hoping for it. But anyway, expecting development from Cesar Ruiz. And then Andrews Pete as your weak link. Hella overpaid, and he is soft, but he's fine. He's been a Pro Bowler, carries no weight. I mean, he's kind of the exact reason why Pro Bowl doesn't carry weight, but there's something to the fact that he started a ton of games, and yeah, he can lose pretty bad at times, but he's relatively stable. So him as your 5th guy, you're not all that worried about it, especially if Cesar Ruiz takes a step up. So they rank 3rd for offensive line. If you get McCoy and Ruiz, who are still young, to really play well off each other, this will, and should be the best offensive line in the NFL. The depth's a little bit lacking. I do like James Hurst there, especially given Teron Armstead's injury questions over his career. Again, last year he was fine, and you hope that he stays there, but James Hurst has been kind of an under-the-radar swingman tackle guard. He was played really nice last year in some limited time. He was good in Baltimore the year before that. Just a all-around technician type of pass protector, so I like him as a backup. He can also play guard, so he's really your swingman 6th option. I think it's important for every team to have one of the James Hursts of the world. So they've got him. They bring in Landon Young, who I actually think could hold up okay. He's a guy with a ton of experience at Kentucky, decent technique. So you got a couple tackles there. Your guard center depth is going to be probably Throckmorton and Will Clapp. Not really expecting much from any of those other guys. It's O-line depth. It is what it is. But the starting unit is dominant. They rank 3rd. You pair that with, the run game, the talent they have at running back, the blocking tight ends that they have, and Sean Payton's scheme. This is going to be a better offense than people realize. I don't think this is some insane explosive offense, but they do rank 19th for me, which I do think is higher than a lot of people are going to project. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. Like, you have an offensive line that's that good. You have legitimately talented running backs and all those things we just mentioned. I don't think this offense is going to suck. And then if Jameis Winston can, just take care of the football, but also open up some of those big plays and get some of the upside in there, that's when you can start to get excited about this offense as a top half unit. But is the explosiveness at receiver going to be there to allow for all that? I don't know. I think that's the question mark. But we've alluded to it. Sean Payton, for offensive coaching, ranks 3rd in the league. I talked about him being the best game planner in the NFL. He really attacks weaknesses at a high level and gets the players on the same page with what he's thinking for the game plan that week. Just a good play caller as far as in-game rhythm as well. He knows when to dial up the trick plays and the shot plays and just a really good feel for the game. The scheme, it's very unique here in New Orleans. It's a modern pro-style offense. You see a little bit of everything here, especially in the run game. They might go duo one week and then run power the next week, inside zone the week after that. You also get the Taysom Hill factor here, kind of complicating what is the scheme. It's Sean Payton's scheme. It's kind of his own deal here, honestly. He has different blends of all of the great stuff you see around the league. So that's a resounding endorsement for this team. And if you want to ask how are the Saints going to live up to the 14th ranking this year with Jameis Winston at quarterback or Taysom Hill at quarterback, it's Sean Payton. And he has earned that respect for now until we don't see it, honestly. So now we're going to transfer over to the defensive side of the ball that I actually think is a little bit better than they get credit for, and a little better than the offense as well. So I'm actually going to preview the whole defense, their rankings first, and then we'll go position by position. But they rank 14th for me on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be a really sound unit. They're kind of good everywhere. There's not a ton of questions, even though they did lose some guys in whether free agency or having to cut guys. The defensive coaching for me is very sound. I like their scheme. I don't want to say simple, but it's just balanced, and I think they do a really good job of not overcomplicating things for these guys and allowing them to play fast. They like to run a lot of man coverage, so you're going to see decent amount of cover one, and even when they go like cover three, a lot of times it's a match cover three where it turns into man coverage very quickly. They like quarters match, so they like athletic defensive backs that can turn and run with anybody. And then up front, it's very 4-3. They do get a little bit multiple, as most teams do, but the core of it is a 4-3 up front. And of course, you got that elite home field advantage that when this thing gets rocking, it elevates the defense. Anyone that's been to a NFL game, you know what I'm talking about. Like those loudest of the loud stadiums, it's electric, and you can feel the players building off of it. And we missed that last year with the COVID season. So getting that back here in New Orleans, this defense could actually be a little better than they were last year. But anyway, let's start with the run defense. David Onyemata got suspended 6 weeks. And that does complicate things because I think they're okay with him in there. He's underrated against the run. Shy Tuttle, nobody seems to know about him, but he's been rotating as a high-end run defender. With those two in there, they're fine. It's not a terrible run-defending interior group. But Onyemata's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season, and then they're going to have to go to, like Ryan Glasgow, Malcolm Roach, who I do like, but he's undersized. Albert Huggins has never developed in the league. Ringo's bounced around. Lorenzo Neal might be their next best run defender. He's an undrafted pickup out of Purdue who's a good, sound, strong run defender, just not an athlete at all and not going to be a pass rusher. If he makes the team, he could have a Shy Tuttle-esque emergence on this team. They've really gotten guys like that to develop, whether it was Onyemata out of nowhere, Shy Tuttle out of nowhere. So there's where the benefit of the doubt comes in there, but I do worry about them early on in the season. They got good running teams on the schedule as well, like Green Bay and New England. They're going to have to step up early on until Onyemata comes back, because I think Onyemata is their tone setter for the interior defensive line. You've got some questions there. Now, the rest of this is in pretty good shape. Cam Jordan, still one of the best run-defending edge players in the NFL, despite getting up there in age. He is built like a defensive tackle, and Jesus, maybe they just play him at D-tackle for the first 6 weeks if the other guys don't step up, and then you put in Peyton Turner on the edge. That is an option. I think Jordan could handle that, honestly. But on the edge, he is elite. If he stepped inside, he'd be okay. Very Michael Bennett-esque in that department. Marcus Davenport on the other side, you just wish you could have seen more development from Marcus Davenport throughout his career. He's fine. He wins with his athletic traits, whether it's in run defense or as a pass rusher. But yeah, he's just not much of a force as a run defender, but he's fine. And then the edge depth, you have like big dudes, Peyton Turner, Tano Passanio. These guys can defend the run from the edge. We just haven't really seen it a ton. Passanio has been used as a little bit more of a hybrid end in Kansas City. So maybe getting to be more of that Cam Jordan 4-3 edge type of player. He could step up in run defense. Granderson as well has actually shown to be kind of a splash player against the run. So I do like the edge group against the run. That's probably the biggest reason they rank 14th. But you also have one of the best thumping, studly, leader, badass middle linebackers in the league. Demario Davis, just criminally underrated year after year after year. He does everything at a really high level. He's one of the few remaining 250-pound do-it-all 3-down linebackers in the league. He is a little bit unique in that way, but one of my more favorite linebackers to watch, just the way he plays the game. He's smart, but also instinctive and physical on top of it with the traits to back it up. So little Demario Davis love. He's going to contribute to the 14th ranked run defense here. Pete Warner was a decent pick in the second round, a little earlier than I would have taken him, but I think he'll contribute. A guy with a ton of experience and decent traits, so he should start here. You got Zach Bond. If you go base, they do go with a ton of kind of either legit 3-4 fronts or that 4-3 odd look where you're bringing kind of an edge rusher in, an outside linebacker in to play edge here, if you follow what I'm saying, so that your 4-3 basically becomes a 3-4. Just one of the guys has his hands in the dirt. And Zach Bond would kind of be that over front linebacker here. So he could actually look really nice in that role. He's a total project. At least he was last year, but this is now year 2 of that project. He is a high-end athlete. I never, ever agreed with the first-round hype he had because I just don't think he's a full-time edge rusher. Clearly, the Saints don't either. But as a hybrid type of outside linebacker who can develop his ability in space and coverage, they did invest a decent amount in him, and he has certainly not shown to be a bad player. So don't forget about Zach Bond here. Potentially having a breakout big season 2. I think he fits the kind of multiple stuff that they like to do really well. So I think they have a plan for him. We haven't seen him play this role really in college or in the NFL at a consistent high level. So I do believe in Zach Bond, and some Saints fans might say he exceeds this ranking of 69, which is very fair. And again, they might bring Quan Alexander back, but I really don't think that would move the needle. I think they're fine with those 3 right there. All could be really nice run defenders in that setup. The depth at linebacker is bland. You got Caden Ellis, whatever, Chase Hansen, it's not even really worth mentioning. Shaq Smith maybe is an undrafted pickup with some size, could get there, but they rank 14th. It would be closer to a top 10 if Onyemata wasn't missing the first 6 weeks, but I do think that they're going to struggle maintaining the line of scrimmage early on in the season. But not a huge red flag either. It's going to be a good run defense. And then the pass rush grade also going to come in 14th. So you got Cam Jordan is still an alpha. He put up another 60-plus pressure season. That's all he does. That's the meaning of a true number 1 pass rusher for me is, can you get close to 70 pressures every year? And the answer for Cam Jordan for his career has been yes. Now he's 32 years old. He didn't do it last year. Maybe on that downward trend. I think that's fair. So coming down to an 86 for my projection for next year. He could still play like a elite 90-plus player or whatever, but I think it's fair to expect some drop-off, but maybe he repeats what he had last year and is a really nice piece there. Not even a piece, he is the piece. And then Marcus Davenport on the other side, just very average number 2 guy. He can get you 40 pressures, 6-7 sacks. It's what you can probably expect from him at this point. Now, it is a contract year for Davenport. They did bring in Peyton Turner to kind of push him for that role a little bit. So it's not out of the question for him to get, in the best shape of his life. Maybe it clicks this year. Probably not. Probably his last year here is a decent number 2. And then David Onyemata, when he comes back, is an underrated pass rusher on the inside. But you are, again, going to miss him for 6 weeks. And those 6 weeks, this could be a bottom 10 pass rush because you got Shai Tuttle, who's not the pass rusher that he is a run defender. You have Malcolm Roach, who is a project. He's interesting. I thought he was a steal of an undrafted pickup. I had a 5th round grade on him, and he has upside, but does it click into place? We'll see. Everybody else there is just, it's not someone you're you're leaning on. So does Malcolm Roach start? Do they slide, again, Cam Jordan inside and go with Peyton Turner or Passignon on the edge? Those would be options as well. But your interior rush, regardless, is not looking very promising until Onyemata gets back. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, Roach is your fourth guy, or Turner comes in off the bench as your fourth guy. Yeah, we can get talking then, but it's not until Onyemata comes back. He's a big piece there. And as far as like Peyton Turner goes here, I didn't like the pick. I had him as a third-round guy, physical upside, someone to sit and develop. It is a nice situation. This is kind of exactly where he should have ended up, in a more of a 4-3 team where he can sit and develop, because his technique just isn't there, and he's going from lower-level competition to the NFL. I thought it was a reach. I didn't like that pick. I'll just be honest about it. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope the Saints prove me wrong, but that's where I come in on that, is kind of the same way I felt about LJ Collier in a lot of ways to the Seahawks. So I'll just leave it at that. I think he has a lot of development to do. The upside is there, and we'll wait and see. Carl Granderson is an interesting piece as well. A lot of athletic traits, had some troubles off field at Wyoming that caused him to fall out of the draft, but he was a draftable prospect before all that stuff, and he has physical traits too. So do keep an eye on him. Noah Spence, remember him, he's still around. They have some options. It's going to be a very good pass rush once Onyemata gets back, but early on, we'll see. It could be a situation where they're not getting after the quarterback a whole lot early on, again, as they play some good offensive lines. The linebacking group is going to rank 11th, which I do expect is higher than some people think, because I do think Demario Davis is underrated. I think he's certainly a top 10 linebacker. He is getting up there in age, and his coverage grade did drop off last year, but as the year went on, I think he kind of whipped back into shape and looked kind of like his old self. So I still have high expectations for Demario Davis as their alpha linebacker. Certainly the reason they're close to a top 10 group. The only reason they're not top 10 is you've got question marks next to him. Second round pick, Pete Werner. How quickly does he translate to the NFL? That's really what it's all about. I think Pete Werner can be a really nice complimentary number 2 linebacker for a long time in the NFL. I don't know if I ever see him, becoming a Demario Davis or Eric Kendricks or any of these top linebackers, but I think he can be a really quality starter for a long time. I get the pick. They needed that kind of day one impact there because they couldn't turn to free agency for it, really. So we'll see. I think he's going to outperform my draft grade of him, which I think was 3rd to 4th round. I think he'll do just fine as a second-round pick. And then you have Zach Bond, who we kind of played around with the idea of him earlier as well. For me with Zach Bond, the sky is the limit for him as a converted edge rusher. It's just a matter of getting the processing of the linebacker position up to speed for him, seeing coverages, reading the quarterback's eyes, understanding route concepts. If he's going to be a full-time off-ball linebacker, that's just the stuff that we need to see. It's just a matter of putting it to the field. So I think there's a lot of potential with this group, especially down the road. But this year, I don't know. I don't know how good Pete Werner and Zach Bond will be. And again, the depth there, honestly, not even really worth bringing up. It's mostly kind of journeyman veterans there with Ellis and Poling and Hansen. Sutton Smith in the same breath as Zach Bond is an undersized, converted, really athletic pass rusher from college. So at least your development path for them is the same. And then Shaq Smith's an undrafted pickup with some size. So 11th at linebacker, it's going to help, again, contribute to me, an underrated defense with maybe an underrated linebacking core there. Now we get to the secondary, where they rank 16th. It's a very sound secondary. There are some holes there, however. So you have Marshawn Lattimore, a true alpha corner, in my opinion. Now, he's not the consistent player that you get from a Ramsey or a Jair Alexander, but he's got all the traits. He's got the high-end stuff. Cornerback, it's a hard-as-hell position to play, man. And Marshawn Lattimore, in a man-heavy system like this, you're gonna see times where he gets beat. It's just the nature of the position. It happens with the Denzel Wards of the world. It happened with Stephon Gilmore last year, Xavier Howard, even your Jair and Jalen Ramsey. You're gonna look bad occasionally in the NFL. So I still really believe in Marshawn Lattimore. I don't think they've paid him yet. I think he's next. They obviously have a lot of complicated stuff to work out here after the Ryan Ramczyk deal and the cap situation they have, but I still think Marshawn Lattimore is a true top 10 corner in the NFL. And then I guess let's talk about Paulson Adebo, who I frankly expect to win the number 2 cornerback job here. He was one of my guys in the draft. And honestly, if you flipped Paulson Adebo with either of their first 2 picks, in my opinion, their draft looks a lot better. I know it doesn't work that way, but I thought Adebo was the best player pound for pound that they actually drafted. I had a 2nd to a 3rd round grade on Adebo, and I was more, 3rd, 4th round territory for Turner. But you look at Adebo's game, where I thought he was really sound. I think he's got solid press technique that can play day one in the NFL. He's a good athlete. He's a 4.4 speed guy. He's got the length you look for. He's got good zone instincts. He's a converted receiver, kind of like Xavier Howard was, where he is really good at tracking the ball, and he can make some big plays on the ball as well. I think they got themselves a steal, man. This is one of the big steals of the draft, and I have full expectations for him to come in. He's a smart guy out of Stanford who has played at a high level in college, just opted out of that final season. It was kind of weird how both of those Stanford guys with Walker Little and Paulson Adebo were guys that maybe were going to be first-round talents, but then they just opted out, and that hurt their draft stock. So I think they may have gotten potential first-round talent in Paulson Adebo. I'm very high on him. So expectations are really through the roof for him, and I think he'll hold up early on, which is not easy for a rookie corner, but at the same time, he is a rookie corner, so there's going to be some learning curves almost assuredly. And the other reason I think he starts is you look at the rest of this cornerback room, and I don't really want to see any of these other guys starting on the outside. You have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, excellent slot corner, super tough dude, trash talker, really good contributor in the run defense as well. Coverage for him is fine. He's a good athlete. He's good in man-to-man coverage. I think he's still developing the zone instincts and the anticipation side of the game, but he's a good slot corner, but not a perimeter guy. He's also kind of a backup safety in the event of injury there too, because you'll see that the safety group is really thin. That's where Patrick Robinson comes into play here, PJ Williams. These three are really all kind of slot corner safety hybrid types at this stage. Robinson, I just can't picture him playing outside corner. He hasn't done it in a long time. So I really look to Paulson Adebo and Ken Crawley as your two outside corners, and it's got to be Paulson Adebo. So I think he's a third-round diamond in the rough waiting to happen here in New Orleans. I do got to bring up Grant Haley. I could see him kind of rising to the from the depths of nowhere here. He's a 5'9", uber quick athlete out of Penn State. Had his learning curves early on for the Giants, but I think he's a nice pickup for the Saints. And again, if you have an injury at safety that we'll talk about here, they have no safety depth. I think you see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's played a little bit of everything, step into more of a safety spot, and then maybe you get Grant Haley competing with Patrick Robinson for that slot corner spot. And a little interjection here, after the original recording, the Saints actually went ahead and signed Brian Poole here as I'm editing this video up. So pretty much everything I just said about Grant Haley takes a back seat. The signing here does not change the secondary grade because I do see this as more of a depth play. But again, just more insurance for that safety spot because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson offers that flexibility. But Brian Poole, very much a slot corner, also could be a safety himself. So does give you some nice depth, maybe a slight bump up for the secondary, but it would not change their ranking here. So there's your corner room. And then as we mentioned, the safeties here very thin, but you got Marcus Williams, who is just a all-around, dare I say, great free safety. He's kind of in that good to great range. They franchise tagged him because I don't think they see him as a $15, $16 million a year type of player, but they certainly were not in a position to lose him this year. So they put the tag on him, and I think that was probably the right move. We'll see if they work out a long-term deal with him or not. But yeah, he's rangy. He's got ball skills, unless he's playing the Vikings in the NFC Championship. And just good all-around free safety here. And then you have Malcolm Jenkins, who is a good scheme fit. He is a former corner. He's good at converting kind of those quarters coverages into man or running those three-seam man coverages on cover three. So it's still a decent scheme fit. He's a leader for the defense, but absolutely slowing down. That couldn't have been more apparent on tape last year. So he brings some nice stuff to the table. You hope that you don't put him in too many compromising situations on overly fast tight ends and receivers, but he still can make an impact here. And then, the safety depth is pretty brutal. You got JT Gray and Eric Burrell, who I wouldn't have any expectations for. We kind of mentioned how that would probably play out in the event of injury, but they don't do a ton of 3 safety stuff here unless you count Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as like a safety. So there's your secondary. It's 16th, and that's assuming Paulson Adebo can hold up as a decent starter and kind of exceed that 70th ranking, 70 grade, I should say. Just a good, solid secondary with really a lot of experience outside of Adebo. So should be pretty good to go there, although not necessarily an elite upside. We mentioned the defense ranking 14th there. I think that's probably about where they come in. I don't see a ton of upside as I look throughout this, but again, not a ton of question marks either. The offense, as we mentioned, coming in 19th, so kind of middling for both, with a really well-coached, good culture here as well. The special teams also ranking 4th in the league. Their kicking game is stout. They buy into special teams. They get rocking, especially at home. They have kick returner options in Deontay Harris. And I think this is one of the best special teams units in the league. So that does help them a little bit. And the culture, of course, ranking 13th in the league. And it's going to be a transition without Drew Brees. I think that's part of culture is having that leadership and really hope that is perspirated throughout the rest of the organization when you have that top quarterback. But I still think having Sean Payton here goes a long way. They've got leadership on the defensive side of the ball as well. So I still think it's a really nice culture. But if things spiral out of control here, you could see that, maybe take a dip down. I want to recap the strengths and weaknesses now before we get into this team's schedule and my over-under prediction for this team. So we just mentioned the coach and culture. It's the single reason this team ranks 14th. You look at the rest of this stuff, the quarterback play, the receiving group, the defense, it's probably not the 14th best team in the league. You're really counting on Sean Payton scheming up the offense and also providing the leadership that he brings as you look at the defensive side of the ball and maybe getting some of the benefit of the doubt with guys like Malcolm Roach and Peyton Turner and those linebackers and a Paulson Adebo. That's where the culture comes in, right? It's the benefit of the doubt slider. And any questions that this team might have, I think they've shown over the last 4 or 5 years that they can answer a lot of those questions rather quickly. So that's the number one strength for this team. And then you look at the offensive line. I mean, when you have an offensive line that just literally lets you do anything you want to do up front and just very rarely gets beat, but also kicks the other team in the mouth, that goes a long way from game planning and just taking whatever you want, especially in the run game. So that's a huge strength. And then I just think the defense is very balanced and reliable. I don't see this really going south on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, sure, you got a couple questions, but they're really kind of good everywhere, especially when they get Onyemata back. Weaknesses here, unstable quarterback play. We talked about Jameis, but Taysom Hill's really the same thing. As good of a play caller as Sean Payton is, if you don't have a quarterback that can share that vision with you and make the right decisions, you're not maximizing what you have in the play caller there, like Drew Brees really was doing. So that's a likely weakness for them. Receiving corps for me is a weakness even when Michael Thomas gets back healthy. I just don't see a ton of explosiveness and reliability in this group. I think they have a vision for how to use some of those guys, but that's all factored in with Sean Payton and what he brings to the table. I don't think it's necessarily talent at the receiver spot, especially outside of Michael Thomas. And then the other thing here, and this is a good transition to the schedule, is a likely slow start for this team because they're out Michael Thomas, who's their best playmaker, and they're out their really only reliable defensive tackle for the first 6 weeks of the season. Michael Thomas is probably going to miss about the first month. Those are some pretty major losses, and the start to their schedule is not easy. You have Green Bay for the home opener, so I have them losing that. You got to go to Carolina, a team that has a lot of expectations, division game there. I have them losing that with those players out. And then at New England, that's another team that they are going to obliterate the interior defensive line there without David Onyemata. They might just run QB power all day with Cam Newton, and they could walk out of that one winning 13-10. So I do have them starting 0-3. So this season for Sean Payton, it's going to be such a test of like how great he can be, because I also have them losing 3 of the next 4 because their schedule's tough. They have to go to Washington, they have a bye week, then they go to Seattle, all the way across country there, and then they have the Super Bowl champion Bucs. So I have them starting 1-6. Sean Payton is going to have to rally this team, get his guys back, get Onyemata back, Michael Thomas back, find out who their best quarterback is, and then hit the second half of the season there really running, almost literally, with how this team is built. But the schedule does lighten up after that. You have Atlanta, you have at Tennessee, you have at Philadelphia, and then Buffalo at home. That's going to be a big stretch there, is at Tennessee and at Philadelphia, where I actually have them losing 2 games there. Because after that, I think they can beat Buffalo at home. If they lose that, they probably take one at Philly, so I'll just call that a split. But yeah, they got Dallas, they got the Jets, they got Miami at home, Carolina at home, at Atlanta. Some winnable games in there. But when you start so slow and your quarterback position becomes a pretty major question mark there, if you want to just talk about projecting this team's season, I don't think this is going to go very well, and I think they do underperform my 14th ranking, if I'm being completely honest. There's reasons why they came in 14th when it comes to Sean Payton and some of the star talent they have here, but just like how I think this thing plays out with the way that things are shaping up, I would say under for the Saints. I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I think they're in that 7-10 win range, but Vegas still has them as a 9-win team, and I just don't think things are boding well for them right now. So I actually did make this bet under 9 wins at -115. I went and made the bet myself. So for the gambling people out there, don't mind it at all. So that's my Saints deep dive. I think there's going to be a decent amount of agreement with a lot of the things I said. I think people are going to say 14 is too high, and honestly, I can't really fault you for saying that with the way the Michael Thomas injury has come out with the Onyemata suspension. But I do still have a ton of confidence in Sean Payton. I think he could make this 7-10 win prediction flip the other way around, and they go 10-7 and win some of those 50-50 games as well, because of some of the strengths that I do think they have. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. And make sure you hit that like button as well if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy the series. I think we're going to have 2 more deep dives this week, so make sure you subscribe and stick around. Hopefully going to have a guest or 2 for those. But until then, cheers, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.